Hello, Jacksonites. And if you can't tell by my demeanor, yeah, this ain't going to be pretty. Today, I will be reviewing the seventh, well, no, technically eighth, and seemingly final installment of one of my all-time favorite film franchises that has kind of ended on a downer. First off, let me look at something real quick. Oh, wow, really? Hmm. Mm. Oh, fuck. I don't know what to rate this movie. Sorry, guys. I kind of have stuff to say about this movie. I just don't really know where to start. So today, of course, I will be discussing Tremors Shrieker Island, released in 2020, which might be the most disappointing movie of all of 2020 for me. Just kind of gonna get my thoughts on this movie right out there. So, uh Tremors Shrieker Island. I was really excited. Of course I was excited when it was announced that a seventh Tremors film was on the way. When the news broke, I was like, "Yes, please, more." And for a good chunk of 2019, I was and a good chunk of 2020 as well. I was a good not good. I was a member of the Tremors official fan group up on Facebook, which was Tremors Everything. And as Tremors Shrieker Island was getting closer and closer to its release, of course, the hype train from that group was getting me excited, especially when the trailers and the TV spots were released for the movie. I was like, "Oh my god, this looks really interesting." So it finally came out on DVD, and I bought it at Target for $15. Didn't get around to watching it until literally last night. This is due to some surprises and not surprises that I learned about the movie, but I finally got around to watching the movie last night. Ah, I was disappointed. I didn't hate the movie per se. Just unfortunately, like they did it again. They pulled another Cold Day in Hell. Not quite as insulting as Cold Day in Hell, which I no, I'm not gonna say that, but Tremors Shrieker Island was just kind of disappointing. Again, I didn't hate it. There are things about it that I really liked, but then there's a lot of elements of this movie that really, really hold this film back for me. And as a finale to the franchise, seemingly it doesn't even work as a finale, but to me it's a finale. It's the end of an era. Um, Kind of just ends it on a whimper rather than a big bang. And it's such a shame. So, That out of the way, let's talk about the plot of Tremors Shrieker Island, which, yes, I know was originally referred to as Tremors Island Fury, which was a working title for the movie, but then they switched it to Shrieker Island, which I do think I would have rather it be called Tremors Island Fury. It's a bit more descriptive. Well, technically, Shrieker Island's a bit more descriptive, but it kind of gives away what the movie's about. But whatever. Big game hunter Bill, played by Richard Brake, owner of Avex Biotech, is leading a hunting party with his partner Dr. Richards and his best hunter Anna, played by Cassie Clare, where he takes wealthy participants to hunt down graboids on his private island known as Dark Island, which is where he operates his company. Dr. Jasmine Jazz Welker, played by Caroline Langrish, and colleague Jimmy, played by fucking John Heder of Napoleon Dynamite fame. Good fucking lord. Work on the research site next to Dark Island, where they were experiencing unnatural seismic vibrations. When Jazz sees Bill leaving Dark Island, she, along with Jimmy and friend Ishimon, set out to investigate what Bill has been up to, and they find a dead graboid with 3 holes burst out of it. They attempt to flee when they realize it has given birth to Shriekers, and in the process, the Shriekers kill Ishimon. Jazz, knowing what graboids, instructs Jimmy to use coordinates provided by her son Travis. Yeah, Travis isn't in this movie. To find Burt Gummer, once again played for the final time, seemingly, by Michael Gross. She visits Bill at his camp and learns Bill has genetically bred these graboids on the island and has made them more powerful and intelligent for his hunt. And this is a good idea. How? He also cut off communication so nothing would stop him and his hunting party. Jimmy finds Bert, who has now lived in isolation as a survivalist away from the government and content on being retired from anything related to graboids. Jimmy informs him that they need his help, and Travis is unavailable due to being in prison in Mexico for smuggling shrooms. The dumbass. Bert reluctantly agrees when Jimmy convinces him it's his destiny. When he learns that Jazz is there, he nearly refuses to help at all due to their history and keeping Travis's birth a secret from him for so many years. Having cleaned himself up, getting rid of the Santa Claus beard and hair, Bert gets to meet the crew, including tomboy Freddy, played by Jackie Cruz, who has a crush on Jimmy. Bill shows up to intimidate Bert and tell him to back off his hunt, but Bert isn't afraid in the slightest and warns Bill that these graboids are a strong threat no matter what planning is implemented against them. Bert tries to gather weapons, only to find out that they have no firearms to defend themselves. Only a bunker from World War II, which is full of knives, machetes, 2 M2 flamethrowers, thankfully, and dynamite that's sweating nitroglycerin and is rendering it unstable. On Dark Island, the Shriekers Jazz and Jimmy encountered have begun killing off members of Bill's hunting party. And eventually they find the Shriekers, but they, like their parent Graboid, are also superior to the originals and can now use their screams as sonic screams, allowing them to pick off Bill's crew one by one, including some dude with a frickin' Gatling gun that fails utterly in shredding to pieces these Shriekers. Whatever. They are saved when Bert and the others arrive, killing the Shriekers and 1 graboid, which leaves 2 in the process. Returning to Jazz's research site, they are shocked to learn one of the graboids somehow made it to their location, showing signs it is much more powerful than they all realized, it being revealed to be 19 meters in length, which is about 62 feet, easily making this the largest graboid of the entire series. Let's see. Bert warns Bill to call off the hunt and turn the communication system back on, but he refuses, and he ends up shooting Bert with a tranquilizer dart and locks him and the others in the bunker. And awakening there, everyone has been bound with zip ties, but Jimmy remembers that the boots he loaned to Bert had the laces replaced with 550 paracord, and Bert is able to saw the zip ties off using this cord. Meanwhile, Bill's hunt continues to go wrong when the graboid that made it to the site earlier shows up and is subsequently dubbed the Queen due to its superiority. Anna quits when Bill's lust for the hunt proves too dangerous and insane. Anna frees Bert and the others from the bunker, but they are attacked by a graboid before they can leave. They use the dynamite to blow it up, leaving only the Queen. Bert locates Bill to reason with him, but is unable to convince him to give up his hunt, and Bill meets his demise when the Queen finds him and yanks him through a bridge and eats him. Bert realizes the Queen is killing the weakest off until Bert, who Jimmy points out must be the alpha, is left remaining. Bert gathers the remaining survivors and, inspired by the way his friends Val and Earl killed off the first graboid back in the first Tremors movie, they plan to lead the Queen to an inactive volcano dubbed the Devil's Punch Bowl and lure the Queen over a plateau onto a bed of spiked dynamite. Bert and Jimmy leave to kill off the remaining Shriekers while Jazz and the others set up the trap for the Queen. Bert and Jimmy make it to Dark Island and begin killing off the Shriekers with just machetes, a flamethrower, and a chainsaw, which is debatably the best scene in the film. They return to the research site, but they find out the Queen is there waiting for Bert. The team heads to the Devil's Punch Bowl to execute the plan, with Jimmy following behind with Bert. The pair are successful in leading the Queen into the trap, but at the very last second, Bert pushes Jimmy out of the way and sacrifices himself to be swallowed by the Queen to ensure her death. And she dies from the dynamite and spikes, but Bert does not survive in the process, much to the sadness of Jazz and the others. In the end, they make a memorial for Bert, leaving behind their weapons with his signature hat and sunglasses. And during the credits, scenes of Bert Gummer from all the previous Tremors films are montaged, thus ending seemingly the entire franchise on a pretty dull and downer note. Well, what do I think of this plot? I like the concept and I like the premise. But unfortunately, it's not the very best execution. Because, okay, was this directed by all three of these movies directed by the same dude? Let me look something up real quick. Oh, all three of these brand new Tremors movies, 5, 6, and 7, were directed by the same guy. And except for part 5, Cold Day in Hell and this movie have just not really been successful Tremors movies. I can tell that this guy is trying, but the lightning in a bottle that he captured with Tremors 5, he just has not been able to recreate with the subsequent two films. This one was a bit better, though, because I feel like there was a lot more effort and thought put into this movie to make it a bit more unique. But still, unfortunately, this movie doesn't resonate with me. And it kind of breaks my heart, too, because he had such a strong start with Tremors 5. And it just breaks my heart that he just hasn't been able to capture the same lightning twice or three times. So with that being said, let's get into the pros and cons of Tremors Shrieker Island. I do have a lot of good things to say about this one. So let's get into them. Pro number one is this movie does have a fairly decent cast. Hang on. Of course, we have the return and seemingly final appearance of Michael Gross as Burt Gummer. He's up to his usual stick, anti-government, anti-structure, anti-civilization, people hater, crazy, borderline schizophrenic nut job that we all love. I would say gun-toting nut job, but there's barely any guns in this movie, which is a big problem. But so he does a good job. He's not quite as angry as he was in Tremors 6, and he's not quite as badass as he was in Part 5, but it's better than Part 6. Overall, usually it's just your usual Burt Gummer stuff. And he's fun to watch, of course. Despite me talking shit, I actually didn't mind John Heder as Jimmy. The only movie that I've seen this guy in was Napoleon Dynamite, of course. Duh, that's a terrible movie, but it is kind of funny. And Blades of Glory. I actually prefer Blades of Glory over Napoleon Dynamite, but he was fine. I expected him to be the giant pussy in this movie, but he was surprisingly brave, which I thought that was kind of refreshing. He's kind of the stereotypical nerdy, geeky sidekick, and I was expecting him to be kind of a coward, but no, he actually puts up a pretty good fight in the film, which is admirable to say the least. Jackie Cruz as Freddy. Oh, she was in Orange Is the New Black. I didn't mind her. I thought she was pretty funny. Though I don't really get how she had a crush on Jimmy, but whatever. I think she had more of a crush on Burt. She's funny. She's a useful character. She knows how to use guns. She knows how to use weapons. She knows how to rig up explosives. And she has good chemistry with Burt and Jimmy. So she was fun to watch. And the rest of the cast, nobody really gives a bad performance in this movie. So the acting overall is pretty good. And you have Richard Brake as Bill. His character I have issues with, but Richard Brake does do a good job playing the character. He always is good at playing characters that just exude a douchebag aura. And Richard Brake, of course, does a great job playing Bill in this movie. So he's fun to watch too. Overall, this movie has a fairly decent cast. Pro number two is the film's humor. Now, it's not nearly as funny as Cold Day in Hell, which I do remember saying that's probably the best thing about Tremors 6, is that it's definitely the funniest of the whole series. This movie's not nearly as funny, but there were a few good jokes in this movie that I thought were pretty good. Easily the funniest is when they're trying to lure the queen onto the explosive trap. Burt and Jimmy are trying to one-up each other by saying, "No, I'll do it. I'm faster. I'm wiser. I'm younger. You got me there." I actually openly laughed out loud and woke up my wife who was laying in bed next to me when Burt said that. That one was funny. And there's just a lot of situational and referential humor. It's not, aside from "you got me there," none of the humor is like laugh out loud funny, but you'll get a few chuckles and sniggers throughout the movie. One, for some reason, that really cracked me up. Partially, it was due to how badly and obviously it was dubbed. But when Burt was cleaning himself up and shaving his head with a knife, he just says, "Ow, that's the dome I know and love." And you can clearly tell that line was dubbed. It was painfully obvious that it was dubbed. But for some reason, it just cracked me up when he said that. "That's the dome I know and love." So yeah, this movie's got a good sense of humor. Pro number 3 is all the film references throughout this movie. They compare the Shriekers to Predator a couple of times. Um, like the Shriekers' heat vision, it's very, very similar to the Predator's thermovision in the first Predator movie. You have a blue outline, and all the heat signatures are in yellow and reddish orange, and you can actually hear the flash sound when they transition to the sound that when they go to the Shrieker's vision, and you hear that like pulsing sound when they're in the Shrieker's heat vision. And when Bert says they hunt by heat, Jimmy says, "Wait, so they hunt using heat signature, just like Predator?" And then when Jimmy and Bert go to fight the Shriekers in a oceanic cave, they slather themselves up with mud, saying, "I'm mudding up, just like in Predator, to hide my heat." Not a bad idea. It's just like in Predator, which I'm amazed Disney allowed Universal to name drop one of their properties. I wonder if they had to pay a fine. There's also an Evil Dead reference in that same Shrieker in the ocean cave fight. Jimmy decides to go in with a chainsaw. Says, "You want the flamethrower?" "No, I'll just use the chainsaw and go Evil Dead." And of course, there's actually not one, but two Godzilla references. Bert saying to Bill to not use a 308 Smith & Wesson against a graboid, saying that's like spitting on Godzilla. And then when Anna comes over to free Bert and his friends from the bunker, she says, "I just saw the Queen, and she's Godzilla big." So there's a lot of film references in this movie that don't really come off as being cheap ripoffs. It just kind of felt like that the cast and crew were having fun with their dialogue. And like they knew that this is a seventh movie in a fun cult following franchise. Let's just have a little bit of fun with the dialogue. And I appreciated that quite a bit. Pro number 4 is the premise. Like I said, I do like the premise of this movie. I still think it could have been done better, but the premise of genetically modified graboids on the loose in a tropical jungle, which is a terrain that would be pretty difficult to spot them in, and also fighting Shriekers in a tropical island setting would also be kind of freaky, because you never know if they were behind bushes or trees and you wouldn't know where the fuck they were. So it's a really cool premise. It's just unfortunate that it doesn't reach its potential. Pro number 5, this is a brief one, but in another callback to Tremors 5, this movie has very beautiful cinematography. None of that cheap, made-for-TV type cinematography that plagued Tremors 6. This movie actually was shot in a tropical jungle environment. It was shot in Thailand, and I definitely could tell the cinematographer took advantage of that, and there's a lot of really wide open scenery of tropical oceanic landscape and a lot of tropical jungle landscape as well. It's very pretty to look at. There's lots of greens and blues and just tropical colors. It looks pretty. Hang on. I keep losing count. 1, 2. Pro number 6 is the special effects in this movie, I think, are overall pretty decent. There's not a lot of them. The explosions and fire effects look really, really solid. There's lots of good use of slow motion, too, for the explosions and flamethrowers. The CGI for there's barely any practicals at all, unfortunately, which this ties into one major problem with this movie. But the CGI effects for the Shriekers and Graboids, at nighttime and in the dark, they look pretty good. But during the day, especially with the Shriekers, they just look kind of cartoony. Like it's pretty obvious that they're just implemented CG effects. The Graboid's not so much, because when the Graboid is spinning out from the ground, all the dirt and loose particles kind of hide the fact it's a CG effect. so that looks fine. But the Shriekers during their initial attack with the guy with the Gatling gun, it's pretty obvious that it's a bunch of implemented CG effects, and it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. But in the ocean cave, the CG Shriekers in there actually look pretty good, and I theorize because it's the background is dark, so they're able to hide a lot of these CG effects with that. You can still see them just fine, and they look fairly convincing there. And especially when the Shriekers were set ablaze by Bert, that was probably the best CG effect in this entire movie. When the Shriekers are writhing out and shrieking in pain of being set on fire, the CG effects actually look really solid there. And there's another scene that it was hidden by the dark and it was lit by a green flare when the queen bitch rose herself out of the ground and was like looking down at one of the hunters. The CG model of the giant graboid looked pretty damn solid in my opinion. And again, there's not really any practical effects except for some splattering graboid and shrieker guts here and there, but they're very few and far between. But those still look really good. It's a good callback to the previous Tremors movies too. You got to have a graboid that explodes and splatters guts all over the place in a Tremors movie. It just has to happen. Pro number 7 is the Shriekers themselves. I really like this design. I like the fact that obviously these Shriekers look very different, but you can still look at them and say, those are Shriekers. Unlike the new ass blasters that just look like demonic vultures. The Shriekers look like actual Shriekers. Just like with the Graboid, with its new design, you can clearly say that's Graboid. With these new Shriekers, you look at them and you can definitely say those are absolutely Shriekers. And yes, I know they do once again reuse the Tremors 5 design for the Graboids, but here I don't really mind it nearly as much because it's a fairly similar terrain to Africa. And also they do say that they're genetically modified, so maybe this is how they look because they're genetically modified. So that I don't have an issue with them rehashing the Tremors 5 designs here. But the Graboids look fine. But I love the Shriekers. I love the Shrieker designs. You can clearly tell that they're Shriekers, but they're a lot more aggressive and they're a lot more fast and agile. And I also love that they're able to use their screams as a sonic attack. I feel like that could have been implemented a lot more into the movie, but it's nice that they included it in the first place. So maybe if there is another Tremors movie down the way and they have Shriekers return, they can still keep that sonic scream attack. I think that would be really cool. And pro number 8 is the action scenes. What kind of little of them there are entertaining. They're not mind-blowing or anything, and they're really overly edited just to make them seem a little bit longer. But the action scenes are still fairly entertaining for what they are. It's nice to see some flamethrower action against the Shriekers. I think that's really cool. And again, seeing them writhe in pain is fun to watch. And also watching Bert and Jimmy take on the Shriekers hand to hand. I don't think that's really been done before in Tremors, is taking the monsters on hand to hand. I think that's pretty cool. Just doesn't last very long. But the action scenes are entertaining for what they are. And unfortunately, they kind of come few and far between. But still, for what they are, they're entertaining. Let's move on to the cons. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 cons, but these are pretty big problems with this movie. Con number 1 is the villains are just bland. Richard Brake, I'll just mainly talk about him. His lackeys are just there to die and get eaten. But whatever. But my main issue with Bill, his character is very simple. His motivations are very simple. His character is very one note. And he doesn't even have a very satisfying death. I would have liked to be torn apart by the Queen queen bitch's tentacles, but instead he's just dragged underwater. Yeah, the villains are kind of bland. There's nothing new done with them. They don't really feel that threatening either. They're not very good villains in my opinion. But yeah, again, Richard Brake does a good job playing Bill. His character though is nothing new and just kind of goes out with a whimper. Con number 2 is this movie is very tame. There's very, very little gore in this movie. There's very little blood, which for PG-13 rated movies, the Tremors films are pretty gory, especially, well, monster gore is a little different, but even with human gore, in the first Tremors movie, you see the bloody remains of someone's brain inside of a construction site. In Tremors 2, you see a dude's leg get chomped and you see blood smears all over the place. Even in the show, people get torn to pieces by shriekers, and there's bloody entrails and skeletons all over the place. In Tremors 3, you see a giant gash wound up someone's back. Tremors 4, there's a dude that literally gets his head bitten off. There's lots of human and monster gore throughout this franchise, but here there's barely any. There's a little bit of monster gore when the three graboids get blown up. There's a little bit of splattering orange guts, and when the shriekers get killed, there's some orange blood that splatters everywhere. But other than that, there's not really that much gore in this movie, and it kind of feels like the filmmakers were pulling their punches. And there's also not very much swearing. They say shit and damn and hell a couple times, but there's not really that much swearing. There's not much gore. There's not a whole lot of action, which I'll get to that in a minute. Yeah, this movie's very tame. I used to say that Tremors 3 was the tamest, but no, I think this one easily trumps Tremors 3 as the tamest of the entire franchise. Con number 3 is the lack of graboid screen time. This is kind of a mixed element because while, yeah, the graboids don't have a whole lot of screen time, they technically are a present threat for a good chunk of the film. And it's good that the filmmakers pulled a Jaws and did a good job of implying the graboids' presence rather than showing them, which was cool. But still, I could have gone for just a bit more graboid screen time, just to give us some more shots of the monsters. And this will lead me into con number 4 is the lack of Shrieker screen time. The Shriekers barely have maybe 5 minutes of screen time in this movie, maybe 6 max. And this is an hour and 43-minute long movie. Well, technically it's an hour and 38, not counting the long credit sequence. And the Shriekers barely have 5 or 6 minutes worth of screen time in a movie called Tremors Shrieker Island. The Shriekers are barely seen. And we haven't seen Shriekers in a Tremors movie ever since 2003 with Tremors the series. What the fuck? And the Shriekers are my favorite form of the graboids, and they're barely on screen in this movie. And another issue that I have with the Shriekers is that they're not super threatening. They're killed and murdered so easily in this movie. I saw a review on the Tremors Facebook group before I left, that one of their big complaints was that the Shriekers kind of just show up to die. And yeah, that's very, very true. They're so easily killed off in this movie. And it's kind of disappointing that the title monsters are so barely utilized in this movie. Con number 5 is just in general the lack of action. There's not that much action in this movie. It's all very overly edited to make it feel artificially lengthened. But also, there's just not that much action in general. The action scenes are very short. They're very quick. They're few and far between. And it just kind of feels like the filmmakers were just having action scenes and then cutting them short just so they can get them over with. And another reason why I say the deaths are so tame is that most people just get dragged off by an invisible mouth off screen. You hear them scream, and then that's it. You don't see them again. Um, Even if one thing they could have done to make Bill's death a little more impactful is have him be dragged underwater, and you just see a mountain of blood erupt from under the water, but there's nothing. It's like he was swallowed whole. Um, But yeah, the lack of action really drove me nuts in this movie, and it kind of just made me once again make me feel like this is an extended episode of a TV series. Not nearly as much as Cold Day in Hell. That straight up felt like a TV movie. This feels like a direct to video movie, but at that same time it still feels like an extended episode of a TV show. So, yeah, the lack of action really drove me nuts, but not as much as con number 6 is the death of Burt Gummer. Why? 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 I knew that going into this movie, but still, when I see the film, it kind of comes out of nowhere. It just kind of feels like a real spur of the moment type thing for Bert to sacrifice himself to the graboid, but there's barely any reaction to it. They could, if they wanted to have like Trev, who I thought was going to review this with me, compared it to Logan. I have to strongly, respectfully disagree because they were kind of building up to it all throughout the movie for Logan's death. Here, there's nothing. It literally comes out of nowhere. There's barely any reaction from the rest of the crew. Nobody's crying. No, they just look kind of sad. And then that's it. And the movie ends. Oh, we just killed off the face of the franchise. Whoop-de-doo. The fuck? It is better than Terminator Dark Fate. But still, yeah, I don't like the fact they killed off Bert. I think that's a massive spit in the face. Maybe they can get Fred Ward to come back for another Tremors movie in the future. But to me, the death of Burt Gummer just kind of comes off as them saying, yeah, this is the last one. Great. So overall, guys, Tremors Shrieker Island, I almost want to say it's worse than A Cold Day in Hell. I don't really think that's the case, but at that same time, it also is pretty disappointing. It's not a bad movie. It is fun to watch, and it is entertaining. And if you are a big Tremors fan like I am, of course, I say you should go out and watch it. But go in with either low expectations or no expectations, because I don't know how this one's going to resonate with a lot of fans. Yeah, I don't know if this one's going to age nearly as well. I'll be giving this movie a very weak 7 out of 10. The same rating that I gave Cold Day in Hell, but it's a very weak 7. Slightly stronger than Cold Day in Hell, but still, I wasn't blown away by this one. And it really breaks my heart to say that because I really, really, really wanted to like this one. And I tried. I really tried. But I just couldn't do it. It's not a bad movie. Let me stress that. It's not a bad movie. I'm glad to have seen it. I'm glad that there's 7 Tremors movies plus a show. But still, this could have been done better. So that'll about do it for this review. Join me tomorrow as hopefully Trev will be with me when he and I rank the Tremors franchise, including all 7 movies. If they make another sequel, should they make it a follow-up to the first film, ignoring all the sequels in between? No. No, absolutely not. Maybe if they wanted to ignore parts 6 and 7, that'd be nice. But no, they should not make a follow-up because that's what they tried to do with the show or with the 2016 pilot, but I guess nobody was wanting that, so it got axed. No, I don't think they should make a sequel to the original and ignore everything in between. I feel like that would wipe away so much lore and world building for the Tremors franchise. It would just feel like a spit in the face. No. So hopefully join me tomorrow with me and Trevor as we rank the Tremors franchise, including the 7 movies and the show. And as always, go out and if you go to a tropical island and you hear screaming, run. And I will see you guys in the next video.